relating to impaired driving. Will staff please come up to summarize the bill and respond to questions?
Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. For the record, my name is Asia Mendela, Committee Counsel. Before you is House Bill 8000 concerning impaired driving. To provide some background, impaired driving offenses may result in criminal penalties and suspension of an offender's driver's license. The standard for breath or blood alcohol concentration is 0.08% or higher. Possible offenses include driving under the influence, physical control of a motor vehicle while under the influence, and reckless operation of a vessel. The Washington Code of Military Justice bases the military offenses of reckless or impaired driving on the standard 0.08% for breath or blood alcohol concentration as well. Washington drivers give implied consent to breath or blood alcohol concentration tests and are penalized when they refuse. Breath or blood alcohol tests must be conducted according to methods approved by the state toxicologist. The Department of Licensing is required to suspend, revoke, or deny a driver's license if a blood or breath test result in a concentration of 0.08% or more. Finally, the sale or purchase of liquor to a person apparently under the influence of liquor is subject to civil remedies, including a civil infraction and potential loss or suspension of a business license. I'm going to pass it off to my staff partner to brief you on the proposed bill.
Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. For the record, my name is Cody Smink, Committee Counsel. House Bill 8000 outlines 3 components. It lowers the blood alcohol concentration from 0.08 to 0.05. It requires a public information campaign, and it requires an evaluation of the impacts of reduction in the concentration. First, the reduction of blood alcohol concentration from 0.08 to 0.05 is in regard to impaired driving offenses, blood and breath toxicology test results, driver's license suspension, and criminal penalty probation conditions. This reduction does not change civil liability. House Bill 8000 also requires the Washington Traffic Safety Commission to implement a statewide public information campaign related to the reduction. This includes newspaper advertisements, offering the information in multiple languages, and collaboration with the hospitality industry on 10% of the advertisements. Finally, House Bill 8000 requires the Washington State Institute for Public Policy to evaluate the impacts of a reduction in the blood alcohol concentration by March 1st, 2028. The bill specifies the content of the evaluation, including impacts on serious and fatal traffic crashes, arrests for impaired driving offenses, and business effects on the hospitality industry, including breweries, wineries, and distilleries. This concludes the briefing on House Bill 8000 unless the members have any questions.
Are there any questions? The chair recognizes Representative Vincent.
Thank you for the briefing. In Washington State, bars are required to display signage that says 21 plus to show that they're not allowed to sell to minors. Is there a similar requirement that you're aware of for anti-drunk driving signage? Is there anything in state law that compels establishments that sell alcohol to have that up?
So there are no laws that require bars to display anti-drunk driving signage specifically. However, there are laws that require establishments that sell alcohol to have a no minors sign, as well as a fetal alcohol syndrome warning sign, a no firearms sign, and an alcohol to go sign if they provide alcohol to go.
The chair recognizes Madam Vice Chair.
Currently, what % of accident fatalities in Washington are a result of drunk driving?
According to the Washington Traffic Safety Commission, in 2003, there were 809 fatalities in traffic crashes across Washington, and 409, 51% of them were involved, which involved an impaired driver, and 49% did not involve drinking and are a result of other factors.
Are there any other questions? Will the prime sponsor, Representative Spencer, please come up to testify?
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. For the record, my name is Representative Audrey Spencer, and I have the privilege of serving the 44th District in the great state of Washington. I appreciate you taking the time to hear this bill, which was brought to me by the Washington State Traffic Commission and many families in my district. We preach don't drink and drive, but we allow a safe legal limit of blood alcohol content currently set at a 0.08. Data tells us that any amount of alcohol in one's system slows reaction time and causes flawed decision-making. The only way to safely drive is sober. According to the Washington Traffic Safety Commission, those at a 0.08 BAC are at 4 times the risk of crashing. At a 0.05 BAC, people are at twice the risk of crashing, half that of a 0.08. You will hear arguments today that this is unreasonable, as 1 drink could potentially get someone to a 0.05 BAC. And to that, I say no one should be getting behind the wheel of a vehicle with alcohol in their system, period. And those who choose to do so should face legal consequences. So 0.05 is a compromise. This bill is all about prevention. We want to prevent drunk driving altogether, instead of sending mixed, confusing messages and sitting around waiting for crashes and fatalities to occur and then reacting to that. It does not intend to penalize responsible adults. It intends to connect our laws with the science that show that any amount of alcohol in one's system increases the risk of collisions by slowing their decision-making abilities. We want to educate the public and help emphasize the importance of planning ahead. The work we do on this now will help instill values of safe driving and decision-making for the generations that will come after us, which will save many lives. Over half of the countries in the world recognize a legal limit of 0.05 or less, and they have successfully decreased drunk driving related accidents and fatalities by implementing this policy. It is our turn now in Washington to follow suit and plan ahead for the well-being of our community members. I hope you'll all take this as seriously as I do and choose to listen to the many families of the victims of drunk driving crashes and the lobbyists here today who will provide key statistics to emphasize the need for this bill. That concludes my remarks, and I'm happy to take questions.
James Smith from Bellingham will testify for the bill. Mr. Smith, will you please come up to testify? Mr. Smith, please state your name and who you represent for the record, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and esteemed members of the committee for having me here. My name is James Smith, and I'm a constituent from the 42nd District. Today, I wish to stress my strong support for House Bill 8000. There are, simply put, hundreds of pros than to any feasible con that can be created for the support of this bill. First and foremost is the higher safety standards of our roads. On my travels back to Olympia this weekend, I had the unfortunate circumstance to drive through a long wreck after wreck on I-5. There is no doubt in my mind that a multitude of those scenes were caused by intoxicated drivers who thought they could get away with driving while under the influence. Furthermore, I am assured in my views that one main reason they may have made such a callous decision is due to their negligent thoughts that they were sober enough to do so. In House Bill 8000's report, the following statement is made. The increase in Washingtonians choosing to drive while impaired points to a need to adjust Washington's impaired driving laws. One of the major ways to clearly and decisively change a person's mind to do something so foolish is to make the risk of punishment a greater one. The penalties that accompany this bill are a multitude, ranging from sums to be paid in terms of fines, in terms of days spent in jail, in terms of driving rights being revoked, and many more. Whilst for many, these fines are already enough to stave off driving while intoxicated, the mere fact that now those who may have simply risked it before have a higher risk of seeing these penalties make these chances slimmer. I cannot conceive of any positive reason why the state should ask the alcohol concentration remain higher when all the aforementioned are the simplest of penalties compared to 810 souls lost in 2023 to drunk driving. All that this bill humbly asks is for less personal risk and more risk for punishment for risk on the road can and does lead to fatal circumstances. This bill is nothing new nor nothing radical. In most parts of the world, the blood alcohol concentration limit is already 0.05. Most go even lower. Studies have shown that reducing the state this rate leads to reductions in fatalities and crashes. If I had a choice, personally, I would make it lower, as even people with the 0.5 or 0.05 are still twice as likely to crash than that of a sober person. But if we are to make this change, a positive change at that, then this is the first step to slowly and surely lower the risk of drunk drivers. And so I ask for your strong support in passing this bill. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Are there any questions?
Thank you.
Zach Munson from the 42nd Legislative District will testify against the bill. Mr. Munson, will you please come up to testify? Please state your name and who you represent for the record, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Zach Munson, and I am a resident of Bellingham in the 42nd District. I am here to strongly oppose of House Bill 8000. I believe that Washington should not have a 0.05 limit, as the state has not taken measures to make our roads safer. The inspirations that this bill takes from, that being from Utah and Norway, share massive differences to Washington that make their lower limits more excusable. I do not defend, but I can understand why Utah has a 0.05 limit. Their unusually low alcohol consumption compared to other states due to strong religious backgrounds has resulted in one of the lowest fatality rates from drinking and driving across the entire country. When we look at Norway, the first country to adopt the 0.05 limit in 1936, fast forward today, it has now lowered their limit to 0.02, which is considered by many very sensitive compared to other countries. I defend Norway's limit of 0.02%. Norway provides citizens with safer roads due to high accessibility of their public transportation. They provide their subways on most days to run until 1 in the morning, and on Fridays and Saturdays, the days where people are drinking the most and partying the hardest, Norway provides overnight buses which go as late as 5 in the morning. This access to overnight transit allows for increased road safety, resulting in a decrease in DUIs. Parts of Washington have similar overnight transit services, but they are limited to parts of Washington, including Seattle and eventually Tacoma in March. These services are not provided in any other medium-sized cities, including Everett, Wenatchee, Yakima, and even my residence of Bellingham. Most towns in Washington also don't really have public transportation regular through the evenings and nights and are strictly car dependent. When I look at this bill, I struggle to find anything about it that does not come off as punitive to the citizens of Washington. While I believe this bill could technically result in a slight reduction in drunk driving fatalities to an extent, this bill will primarily be responsible for higher incarceration rates of Washingtonians. I believe Washington should focus on providing services to those that do not have a way back home safely, rather than create bills made for just arresting more citizens. We have too many people in prison already. Let's not add to that. We must focus on expanding public transit statewide and at all times of the day if we want to see an actual significant decrease in DUIs. For this reason, I respectfully urge the committee to reject House Bill 8000. Thank you for letting me speak.
Are there any questions? The chair recognizes ranking member.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just to clarify, so your testimony here today is generally that you defend lowering the BAC, but that has to be in tandem with increasing public transit. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And so you talk about the incarceration of Washingtonians. If it was a like-minded trade-off of incarceration for saving lives, do you think that's not a fair transaction?
I do not believe it's a fair transaction. It works in places like Norway because there are other factors going into their decrease of drunk driving fatalities and DUIs. It is not solely due to decreasing the limit to 0.05. Their access to public transportation pretty much throughout the entire country and overnight bus shuttles is related to them having some of the lowest drunk driving fatalities in the entire world. In 2024, they had a report of only 87 fatalities caused by alcohol of that entire year.
Could you put a number value on, like, if you knew exactly how many Washingtonians were dying every year, that'd be like maybe too much?
I do not have the exact numbers, but I do have the numbers for Norway in that, which was 87 in 2024.
I think I'm asking for like a value judgment. Like if you knew, like, at what point would it be like too many people are dying? Like maybe we should do something about it. 200, maybe less.
I believe for it was around 700 for 2023. I would believe, you know, probably a better goal would probably be around 200, 300. Yes.
Okay, sweet. And so if you knew, if we had a lobbyist testifying this, so that they knew for a fact that like demonstrably, like from the metadata, like it will increase fatalities by that much, would you switch your support in favor of the bill?
No, because they don't do anything else to actually contribute to lowering that other than just making the blood alcohol content limit lower.
Powerful. Thank you.
Ephraim Watkins, with a conglomerate of businesses and hospitality workers, will testify against the bill. Mr. Watkins, will you please come up to testify? Please state your name and who you represent for the record.
I'm Ephraim Watkins. I represent a conglomerate of hospitality associations. Madam Chair and distinguished committee members, thank you for allowing me to speak. I'd like to make 3 points within this bill. The first being that within this bill, you see the lowering of the BAC from 0.08 to 0.05. That's clearly stated. But we see in Utah that these measures do not have the consequences that we would like. We see in Utah that there's increased crashes, that there are more people pulled over, and that when they are pulled over, that their BAC intake is 0.12, which is 0.07 higher than what you were trying to lower it to. More or less, we're seeing a correlation in this bill causing more crashes, fatalities, and arrests to our police departments that are already overworked. And then if you look at the police department in general, you see that this is going to allow for disproportionate arrests, disproportionate stops and traffic stops to those who might look like myself or community members who are minorities. Third, you see liability to hospitality workers that, in my opinion, is unwarranted. Age, race, religion, or height, and other factors play a key factor in someone's BAC. I'm going to have a different BAC than most others up here for those same factors. So then now you are putting on the hospitality workers more liability, more responsibility, and more stress that they should not have. All in all, I am for saving lives. I want every Washingtonian to go home at night. But this, in my opinion, is not the way to do so.
Are there any questions? The chair recognizes Ranking Member Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Watkins, for being here today. So earlier in your testimony, you referred to Utah and their increased crashes. Utah is one of the fastest growing states in the country as a matter of population. Do you think that maybe the increase in crashes may not have to do with DUIs, but it just might be because more people are on the road?
Sure, that's why I said correlation, not causation. I think causation could be the population, but you can't tell me that it doesn't correlate to having, when most people are pulled over with drunk driving, a 0.12, which their BAC is a 0.05. That's still 0.07 higher. That's men lie, women lie, numbers don't. The numbers say that this isn't going to work.
And then, not to be that guy, but do you have a source for like where you're getting your numbers from? Because I mean, last I checked, Utah has reported, I mean, that law was passed in like 2018. So they've been the first and only state for quite some time with 0.05. But I mean, by all indications, they've reduced DUI related fatalities by like 11% or something like that.
Utah Traffic Commission, HB, the House bill, since we're the Senate, HB 2362 has the same numbers in it right here. I can give it to you if you want.
I would love that. I don't know. Yeah, that'd be fire. Thank you.
No. Any other questions for me?
The chair recognizes Representative Rocha Ochoa.
Yeah, thank you for your testimony. I just want to clarify the reasoning in the first argument you made was that in Utah, because they lowered the drinking limit to 0.05, that caused drivers to be drunker on a typical average day?
I wouldn't say drunker, but then you look at the legislation and you look at what's going on. I mean, I would say that if you're going to lower the BAC to 0.05, you would presume that you're going to have a lower BAC when you're pulling someone over. And instead, the inverse is happening where you're having a higher BAC of 0.12 when you're pulling someone over on an average DUI stop. Therefore, I would conclude that within this legislation, if you're lowering the BAC and it's having the inverse action, then clearly something's not working. I could be wrong, I could be misinformed, but that would be my conclusion.
And so then based off that, kind of similar to the previous question asked in your answer, do you think there are other factors to cause that? Like perhaps because the limit is lower, that's forcing cops to now pull over more people based off signs that they're seeing, and they're just finding more people that are drunk?
I mean, that could be of course, I said correlation, not causation. Causation would be the main reason for the problem or causing that effect. I think that these problems are correlated though, and if you lower the BAC, then of course officers are going to look for more indicators and more signs to pull people over. Therefore, you're going to have more people pulled over. But my main point is that I find it alarming that they're pulling people over at 0.12 instead of 0.05, 0.06, 0.07. That's incrementally higher than what it should be and incrementally higher than what I think the bill intended for it to be.
Sandy Mazzone with the Washington Traffic Safety Commission will testify for the bill. Mrs. Mazzone, will you please come up to testify? Please state your name and who you represent for the record.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. For the record, my name is Sandy Mazzone, and I am with the Washington Traffic Safety Commission. To start off with just some background, our commission, we strive to build behavioral traffic safety programs to contribute to achieve to target zero, as we call it, which is when each and every road user, this legislation is not about punishing people or businesses, but rather putting our money where our mouth is. Washington State's campaign of don't drink and drive has to be reinforced. And if people can get to a location to have a drink, they should be able to plan how to get home safely, not only for them, not only for their families, but also their community safety as well. Already, our research has found that 3/4 of people already plan post-outing transportation. And we want to stress this even further. Drinking and driving is a choice, but this choice, we also have to get to the root cause of this. This is influenced by misinformation because our research has found that 1 in 4 drinkers believe that they are not impaired before they reach the 0.08 limit. And I believe that people are looking at the government and your decisions to make everyday choices like the example above, which shows Washington has to lead by example, the legislature has to lead by example, and we as people of this community have to lead by example. And this starts today with House Bill 8000. Thank you.
Are there any questions? The chair recognizes the ranking member Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say, I think you might be the lobbyist, the best lobbyist here today. So thanks for
Thank
being
you.
here.
I appreciate it.
The coolest lobbyist that's testified so far. So
Thank you so much.
thanks for being here. So I guess my question is, how do you do it?
You know, I would say I struggle with success, like anybody else does. Wake up, you're successful, go to sleep, you're successful. So it's about humbling yourself. Thank you.
I'm moved. Thank you.
Of course.
Any other questions? The chair recognizes Representative Commende.
Thank you. I'm totally for community safety and decreasing the fatalities in our roads. However, I'm just curious, if more DUI fatalities involve drivers with BAC levels well above 0.8%, what evidence suggests that this change from 0.8 to 0.5 will meaningfully target the high-risk drivers rather than just primarily affecting social drinkers?
So, for example, I know the past lobbyist also mentioned the Utah study. I was actually able to find information that goes against the study that it actually didn't improve. So it says that there's positive impacts on highway safety in Utah. It says that while the state's concerned about the impact of the law change on the state's economy, the data reviewed that the potential negative effects of concern came from fruition. I believe that it keeps it in people's mind. I don't believe it's gonna absolutely stop someone from drinking. I think it's more of social awareness. I think it's about how we communicate, what we're communicating. We're already preaching, don't drink and drive. So why don't we support that with our actions as well? So I think it's not gonna absolutely stop people from doing it. I mean, there's always gonna be people doing the opposite of what someone says. But I think more than anything, you keep it in mind, like, okay, I can't drink this many drinks because I might go over the limit. It's just something that starts slowly but is impactful and will be shown, I believe, in a couple years.
The public hearing for House Bill 8000 is now closed. We will now break for a short caucus.
Maybe. Madam Chair, I move that House Bill 8000 be reported out of committee with a due pass recommendation.
It has been moved and seconded that House Bill 8000 be reported out of committee with a due pass recommendation. Are there amendments? The chair recognizes Representative Adams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move adoption of Amendment 2.
Amendment 2 has been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? The chair recognizes Representative Adams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just move for adoption of this amendment as it will propose a measured evidence-informed adjustment to the bill's timeline. Specifically, it extends the implementation period for the 0.05 blood alcohol content threshold until 2030. This creates a 4-year trial window compared to the original bill's shorter implementation, allowing the policy to take full effect and generate meaningful real-world data. Thank you.
The clerk will call roll.
Representative Miller,
Aye.
Representative Yang,
Aye.
Representative Smith,
Aye.
Representative Adams, Representative Commende,
Aye.
Representative Nelson, Representative Palmer, Representative Rocha Ochoa, Representative Secan,
Aye.
Representative Vincent. Let me count. The total is 9 ayes.
The amendment is adopted.
I move that the adopted amendment be incorporated into substitute House Bill 8000 and that substitute House Bill 8000 be reported out of committee with a due pass recommendation.
It has been moved and seconded that substitute House Bill 8000 be reported out of committee with a due pass recommendation. Are there any other amendments?
I move for movement of Amendment 3.
Amendment 3 has been moved and seconded. Is there discussion?
So the amendment before us here would require a BAC chart to be placed in every establishment selling alcohol in Washington State. This is a simple public safety measure. This would allow someone to look at how many drinks they've had, what their body type is, and look on this chart and say, this is what my BAC is. This will help with some of the high tolerance, low tolerance debate where someone who's had more drinks and feels okay to drive will be able to look at this and understand how much alcohol is actually in their blood. And again, tolerance and BAC are different. We're looking specifically not at how you handle your BAC, but what it is at. And this would be a really good way for someone to look at it, not have to guess on whether they're okay to drive and not catch a DUI on the way home because they thought that they were below 0.05. So it's a really good public safety measure and will help keep people safe.
The chair recognizes Madam Vice Chair.
Representative Vincent, how many signs will be required to be posted at each establishment?
To my understanding, it is one sign at each establishment. It's a chart that will be in line of sight for the customer. And to my understanding, it'll be either at exits or at the point of sale so that they can make a decision when they're drinking on how many drinks they can have and still be under the BAC that they are looking to be under for that night.
Do you know the number of establishments that would be affected by this bill?
I do not have that number. I would refer that to staff, but again, it would be one for every establishment in Washington that is a vendor of alcohol. So every bar would have to have this up.
The clerk will call roll.
Representative Miller,
Aye.
Representative Yang, Representative Smith,
Aye.
Representative Adams,
Aye.
Representative Commende? Representative Nelson? Representative Palmer? Representative Rocha Ochoa? Representative Second? Representative Vincent? There are 9 ayes and 0 nays.
The amendment is adopted. Are there any other amendments? The chair recognizes Representative Palmer.
I move adoption of Amendment 001.
Amendment 001 has been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? The chair recognizes Representative Second.
So I have a question to the representative presenting this amendment. Effectively, it requires businesses to have some type of breathalyzer. I mean, there's not a mandate, but they have the option to do so. And there are a form of benefits to them if they do go with that route. But my concern is more so with the prosecution of those establishments. For example, when an individual ends up committing a DUI and they happen to be intoxicated from a specific establishment, would this not put a more legal burden on the business itself? Because if the establishment has the breathalyzer and individuals still go out to commit DUIs, do businesses not risk more administrative sanctions, licenses being revoked? How would this amendment help businesses?
The breathalyzer would be a resource. It's a voluntary action through the establishment that they would go out and buy one. It is basically just a tax deduction that they would get so they don't have to pay for it out of their pocket. Washington does currently have a dram shop law, basically that an establishment can be prosecuted if they serve someone that is obviously intoxicated or if they're a minor. So there wouldn't be excess liability.
Chair recognizes Representative Second.
From my understanding, there's no degree of quality when it comes to the breathalyzers that establishments have to get. So let's say in a case where an establishment gets a cheap breathalyzer and that breathalyzer happens to fail, I guess to the business, they wouldn't assume that the individual is not intoxicated, but the individual is intoxicated. There would be still liability on the business because that's a failure on their half. So again, my concern is the deduction that businesses get is very minimal compared to the potential fees they will have to pay in litigation to retain their licenses, and even just administrative backlash.
The chair recognizes Representative Palmer.
I do understand your concerns. However, it basically is just a tool and it's up to the customer to use it. They don't have to use it in order to get out of the establishment. It is up to the customer to use it. And so it's voluntary. Additionally, the language of the amendment doesn't require staff to interpret the results or act on whatever the results may be. It is basically just a tool, just like the sign. It's just informational. It's to provide, they could use the breathalyzer and then leave, just to give more scientific background than an estimate.
The chair recognizes Madam Vice Chair.
Representative Palmer, if you say that this breathalyzer is just a tool and that staff isn't required to take any action after, what statistics or what evidence do you have that will prove that this will lower the amount of drunk driving incidents?
Chair recognizes Representative Palmer.
Unfortunately, I do not have any statistics. I provided the time I could get some.
The chair recognizes Representative Vincent.
I want to go back to the representative's point about cheap breathalyzers and maintenance costs. I just want to point out that part of the amendment is that the deduction is up to $500. I'm not very well versed in the price of breathalyzers, but I would assume that you're not going into a Dollar Tree for a $5 breathalyzer or whatever if you're allowed to take up to $500 off. So I would assume that any rational business that is looking to install this breathalyzer and use this deduction would, to the best of their ability, get one that would stay working, that they wouldn't have to do a whole lot of maintenance on, and would take as much of that deduction as they could.
Chair recognizes Representative Palmer.
Just to add some numbers to what you were saying, breathalyzer range cost is between $30 and $150. $150 obviously being the better quality. But if they are getting a tax deduction off of it, it would be in their best interest just to go with the $150 one. That would be more reliable.
The chair recognizes Representative Commende.
While this amendment creates an incentive for the businesses, if it's already optional for people to drink below the BAC level and they don't, how does this actually lead to efficient change in lowering fatalities?
The chair recognizes Representative Palmer.
It's more just informational. So a lot of people might not understand what a 0.05 looks like for them or a 0.08. So let's say they're leaving and they just want to be more aware of where they're at so they can make a safe decision, then it would just give them the information to do so.
The chair recognizes Representative Sacon.
So just going back to the incentive factor, if this legislation, from my understanding, is optional, and we have historical precedents of businesses having their licenses revoked, why would a business go with this? Because if anything, this establishes a system in which once that system fails, the business becomes more, the liability increases on them. So why would they go with this? What is the incentive to the business?
The chair recognizes Representative Palmer.
Again, it is not mandatory for the like servers or employees to act on the readings. It is just a tool for the customer. So hopefully the establishment would want to better inform their patrons of their BAC level and let them make safe decisions instead of estimating. And it's safer for them as well because it would be an accurate estimate or informational estimate of where they are.
The chair recognizes Representative Vincent.
I think something that's being touched on here is it's really hard to know what BAC you're at, especially because right now, like we've gone over earlier, there's no signage that's required to be put up. The breathalyzer is not something that's in every bar. There's really, especially with people having different tolerance levels, it's very hard to determine what you're at. I think the signage amendment that was just moved and then this amendment are ways that we can get better information into people's hands about how much alcohol they've really had and whether or not they're okay to operate a motor vehicle. So I think that just the idea of having these resources for people is going to be really helpful and distinguishes from some of the other areas we were talking about earlier, like Utah, that don't have things like this necessarily. So these are just resources for people to have a better understanding where they're at, because right now it's really hard and you just have to guess at what your BAC is and whether or not you're okay to drive.
The chair recognizes Representative Rocha Ochoa.
I think my biggest concern with this amendment is it technically benefits businesses more than it would benefit actual Washington drivers. Again, with the incentive of the deduction, there is no cap to how many breathalyzers businesses could have. And again, they're not forcing people to actually breathalyze themselves. So that would be my only concern.
The chair recognizes Madam Vice Chair.
I think my concern is that if this is an informational tool, many people, for example, still underage drink despite knowing that they're fully under 21. What part of this amendment would prevent people from choosing to drive after knowing that their BAC level is over 0.05 or 0.08?
The chair recognizes Representative Palmer.
There's no portion of this amendment that stops them from actively drinking and driving. It is just for them to be more aware of where they are. And then just to add that there is a current multiple bars in Seattle that do have breathalyzers and they have not been prosecuted or held liable for DUIs.
The chair recognizes Representative Commende.
And how does them being aware lower the fatality rate?
Chair recognizes Representative Palmer.
The patrons, not the establishment being aware.
the drivers, the people, the consumers?
It would, again, it just, we hope that they make good choices and that understanding that they are above the legal limit, that they would choose not to drink and drive.
The chair recognizes Representative Vincent.
I think going back to Madam Vice Chair's question is the difference between this and underage drinking is if you're underage and you're consuming alcohol, you know how old you are, you know you're breaking the law. A lot of the BAC discussion here is there is no good way right now for the common person to go out to a bar and know what BAC level they're at. And if they're okay to drive home, they simply have to guess. So that's the main thing here is we're not, with this amendment, this would not stop someone who knows what BAC they're at, who wants to drive home under the influence to go and do that. This is a tool for someone who doesn't know what BAC level they're at to have a clear indicator of whether they're okay to drive home. Because right now there's, like I mentioned earlier, there's no way to do that. So that's the difference between this and underage drinking.
The chair recognizes the ranking member Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a Representative Comende's question for Representative Palmer. The way that I view this amendment is that it's just sort of expanding the tool belt that an individual may have when they are, at the tail end of a night and they're trying to understand where they're at personally. It's hard to take this policy and sort of extrapolate how many lives exactly it will save, et cetera. But I kind of see it as like offering someone an Uber or something like that. If someone goes into a bar and maybe they're at a 0.08 and, they take that breathalyzer and they realize that they're really at a level, blood alcohol content wise, that might really impair their driving, that could be the defining point in whether they hit the road that night. So I appreciate your questions about how many lives exactly this will save. I think that's really difficult to discern in this policy discussion, but I think it's about offering creative incentives for people to potentially make the right choice. And I'll also note that I believe that this does not really affect the fiscal note for this bill, and I think it offers mild positives for some businesses and tax credits. Thank you.
The clerk will call roll.
Representative Miller,
Nay.
Representative Yang, Representative Smith, Representative Adams, Representative Commende,
Nay.
Representative Nelson, Representative Palmer, Representative Rocha Ochoa, Representative Secon,
Nay.
Representative Vincent. The total is 5 ayes and 4 nays.
The amendment is adopted.
I move that the adopted amendments be incorporated into Substitute House Bill 8000 and that Substitute House Bill 8000 be reported out of committee with a due pass recommendation.
It has been moved and seconded that Substitute House Bill 8000 be reported out of committee with a due pass recommendation. Is there discussion? Clerk will call roll.
Representative Miller,
Aye.
Representative Yang,
Aye.
Representative Smith, Representative Adams, Representative Commende, Representative Palmer, Representative Rocha Ochoa, Representative Secon, Representative Vincent. 9 ayes and 0 nays.
By your vote, Substitute House Bill 8000 is reported out of committee with a due pass recommendation.